Hello and welcome back to Niche Tea, where we talk about drama happening in communities you may not be a part of. I don't personally play Warhammer, but I am extremely adjacent to it, so there was no way I wasn't going to cover this. Last time we talked about the ongoing series of concerning and questionable choices coming from the board of directors of NaNoWriMo, or National Novel Writing Month. I want to quickly make a clarifying statement for that story. Something that I didn't properly convey is that the staff as a whole is seen as a one unit acting in tandem due to the lack of transparency between the staff and the board and the members and the municipal liaison. Because of that, there is a lot of concern from the members and the MLs about who is trustworthy within the staff. Because from their perspective, last year, multiple people came to the staff with express true concerns about what this one person was doing, but nothing actually happened until things were escalated beyond the staff. It very well may be the case that there are members of the staff who truly tried to do absolutely everything they could and had their hands tied by the board the same way MLs are now having their hands tied. Certainly it does appear to be the board's MO. So I don't want to discount the idea that there are reportedly staff members who are trying very hard to do the right thing and are not able to because of restrictions that they can't control. It's just that from the member standpoint, you don't know who's a bad actor and who isn't. So, Warhammer. We've talked about Warhammer before. It is a tabletop strategy game where you use miniatures. You build armies, you play within the rules for those armies, and then you play your army against someone else's army one-on-one. Traditionally, there are other ways to play too. It's a neat hobby because you don't just buy like a ready-made army or like a set that has two armies in it and then play it with people as you want. You actually build your army, and I mean build it. You choose, physically build and paint your models with custom paint jobs, and the pieces can be custom. Like you can mix things around and make them what you want them to be. The world of Warhammer 40k takes place in this grimdark future where there are a bunch of different races all throughout the galaxy, and they're pretty much all at war with one another. And then there's this like big bad thing called the Warp, where there's like really bad guys in who are pretty much enemies to everyone. And then there's also this like wacky alien race that eats everything it comes across, that's got like massive armies outside the galaxy, and if those come in, that's gonna kill everybody. And then there's also like a whole shit ton of zombie robots that are waking up from their tombs now, and that's gonna kill everybody. There's a lot of shit going on. So there is a story, there is lore associated with Warhammer. And as I mentioned before, there's also rules for how each army is able to be played. The core aspects of both the lore and the gameplay for any particular race / army within that race is called a codex. And every number of years, the codexes get updated. These updates are editions, and right now, Warhammer 40k is in its 10th edition. Each edition is a new set of books for anything that's playable within the game. In terms of gameplay, it's the same as having a game patched. You have to use the most recent rules, so it will redefine what those rules are and either buff or nerf a particular army, introduce new things along those lines. And then from a story standpoint, each edition moves the story, the macro story of the universe forward a little bit. Moving to a new edition is kind of a big deal. It's not like a thing that's done every year. So they don't drop all of the books at once. They sort of drip feed them. So what happened? One of the most recent 10th edition codexes, which was released by Games Workshop, was for a particular group called the Custodes. They're basically these big golden armored badass bodyguards for the undead human emperor. There are two primary issues people have with the codex, and while I'm explaining what they are, I want you to mentally guess in your head which one you think is the bigger problem. The first issue is that it seems that the updates they made to the rules of play for the Custodes are really bad. I'm not going to get into it too much because it would take too long and I wouldn't describe it very well anyway, but basically the Custodes have a very defense-focused strategy for how they approach battles, and the 10th edition book took away or nerfed a bunch of their really key defensive capabilities without giving them any strong attack focused stuff to help buff their attack up. So their attack is still not great, and their defense, which was their main thing, has been severely compromised. So that's issue one. Issue two is that there are girls now. Did you make your guess for which one's pissing everyone off? Yeah, it's the girl part. In the roughly 100-page 10th edition Custodes Codex, there is a 2-page story about a female Custodes named Kesh. This marks the first time a female Custodes was ever expressly talked about by GW in any of the official lore. This wasn't announced. This wasn't like a big fanfare. Oh, there's gonna be, because they just released the book and it had this in it. And when they were asked about it on Twitter, they responded by saying, basically, there's always been female Custodes. And there is a group of people who are very upset about this. As a relevant aside, Warhammer has a very interesting makeup of players. Some aspects are very homogenous. For example, it's overwhelmingly men and overwhelmingly over 25. 5 because it's very expensive to play. But politically, it actually can be pretty diverse because on the one hand, it does fall into kind of the traditional tabletop gaming nerd space, which leans more left. But then on the other side, it is very, very much a male gaze power fantasy game. And so it has attracted a lot of people who are more right-leaning as well. So there's a group of people who very much do not want Warhammer to change going forward from what it has historically been in a lot of ways, and are very upset with the fact that Games Workshop does not agree with that. And Games Workshop has been very, very clear over the last few years about where they stand on this stuff. Several years ago, they actually made a very definitive statement about what they feel about this. And they expressly say at the end of that statement, and if you feel the same way, wherever and whoever you are, we're glad you're part of the Warhammer community. If not, you will not be missed. So from a purely just like, they've gone woke and I don't like it standpoint, that's true. They did, yes. And to be clear, anyone is within their rights to stop buying a product or playing a game for any reason, whether any other person agrees with it or not. So there are a lot of people saying that basically they're gonna stop playing entirely or stop giving their money to a Games Workshop, and they're well within their right to do that. But there are also a lot of folks trying to make the claim that this is an objectively bad decision for Games Workshop to do. And that's where I think it falls off, because just none of the arguments are that strong. One is that people feel that by saying there have always been women in the Custodes, that Games Workshop is trying to gaslight them. So people are combing through books to find instances of saying like male-focused things like he and sons and those guys or whatever. That's not what Games Workshop meant. What they meant was, this is now the reality. There have always been women. They're telling you that that's what it is now. I see people arguing over whether or not it's a retcon. It is. Even if there isn't anything expressly in the history that says that they can't be women, simply being like, oh, and by the way, some of these were women the whole time, that is technically a retcon. But they retcon shit all the time. This isn't the first or last or anywhere near the biggest retcon that they've done. This story's been going for like 40 years. I also saw a really interesting tweet from somebody saying that the story was specifically set up to allow for retcons by saying like nobody's a reliable narrator. I thought that was interesting. But either way, I don't find it to be a really strong argument, because why is this retcon the one that's making you cancel all your subscriptions and stop paying, not any of the other ones? Like, this doesn't affect the rules. You don't have to play women. There actually aren't any women models yet. They're probably going to release them soon. Again, it was a 2-page story in a 100+ page book. And I didn't even bring this up before, but the story's great. Like, I literally have not seen any actual criticisms of the story itself. It's very cool. Kesh is a badass. There's a lot of people thinking it's pandering, but that feels very much like a fat person existing is promoting obesity. Like, women actually existed in this. Oh, you're pandering to women. But then simultaneously, I'm seeing a lot of criticisms over the way this was rolled out, like the fact they didn't make a big announcement, like the first female Custodes, and here are the models, and look at Kesh, and da-da-da. Like, why was it just this quiet rollout where you just included women now? And it's just funny because doing a big fanfare thing of it would be pandering. And my understanding is that normally when GW makes these types of changes, this is how they do it. They don't make big announcements, they just do it. So they're treating this the exact same way they treat any other retcon of a similar type, which is, in my opinion, the right way to do it. Some really mad people brought up that they think it's because BlackRock has invested in Games Workshop. I promise you that's not it. BlackRock doesn't give a shit. As long as GW makes money, BlackRock is golden. Which brings us to the last argument, which is that this is a bad financial decision for Games Workshop. That all the pandering and wokeness will alienate their core fan base who currently spend all the money in favor of potentially pulling in new people who don't play and don't spend money. And certainly time will tell, but this is not the first thing like this Games Workshop has done. It's just the latest, and so far it's worked out very well for them. And in response to all of this uproar from people who are unhappy, there's a lot of people who are very, very happy who are then coming in to really like shit on the people who aren't happy. So there's a lot of warring going on both on social media, but also in like YouTube videos and in articles on websites. There's one website called Goonhammer that does articles on Warhammer stuff, and they put out an article every week called Content We Like. And this week a guy called Rob the Chirurgeon, who plays Chaos, which are against the Custodes, did the article, and he made it Custodes We Like instead of Content We Like, and it was all a bunch of orcs wearing gold armor, and then the last one was female Custodes. There's a lot of clowning going on. Actually, I'd be remiss to not get a quote, I guess. Hey.
Hey, what's up?
I'm doing the video about the Custodes thing. Can you introduce yourself real fast?
Sure. I'm Robert the Chirurgeon Jones, and I'm the CEO of Goonhammer.
Cool. So you wrote this article about Custodes you like, and you wrote at the bottom, want to scream and holler about female Custodes and how they don't belong? Go fuck yourself. Do you have any comment?
Yeah, the people who have a problem with female Custodes can go fuck themselves.
Fair enough.